this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel now. The town of Lunenburg, in response to COVID-19, is currently following the guidance from the Lunenburg Board of Health. And all town facilities are open to the public on a limited basis. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, all public meetings are being conducted remotely. This meeting is being broadcast over the local access cable on Facebook Live. And will be able to be found on the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel within 24 hours after meeting. To participate remotely on Zoom, members of the public may use cell phones, tablets, or computers with audio and video capabilities. The Zoom meeting ID is 861-6749-5304. No participant ID is needed. Just press pound when asked. All participants who are not members of the commission or staff will be muted by the chair. Commission and app users may use the raised hand feature to request to speak. To access the raised hand feature, open the participant list by clicking on participants. To raise your hand, click on the button in the bottom of the participant list. The chair will call you and unmute you. Telephone audio users may dial *9 to request to speak after joining the meeting. Members of the public must give their name and address before they begin speaking. Please direct all comments to the chair. That's what it says, but we have less than 10 people, so I don't think I'm going to turn on the automatic muting. If you have trouble accessing Zoom or have general questions, you can send an email to lcc@lunenburgonline.com during the meeting. Emails containing questions or comments that are to be read aloud at the meeting must be signed with full name, address, and phone number. Please be aware if you're using video, other people will be able to see you, and anything that is broadcast will be recorded and be there forever. The agenda lists all topics may be discussed at the meeting, and those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by open meeting law. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So first, let's do a roll call, make sure everybody's here. I'm Bob Pease, I'm the chair. Ken Jones?
I am here and I'm at work, so if I run off, you'll know why.
Okay, Rich Birch? You don't think he's here? Katie Childs?
Present.
Carl Luck?
Here.
Jack Rabbit?
Here.
And Jeff Viviano?
Here.
All righty then.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Just directed to Ken. Ken, if for some reason you do have to sign out, just let us know you're signing out because I have to record the time that you sign out.
Okay, will do.
And Mr. Chairman, just to point out, Rich actually had surgery on his shoulder this morning, so I suspect that he's probably not in his best at his best right now.
Probably not.
Yeah, he's moaning and groaning.
Okay. Are there any announcements? First and only item on the agenda is a request from Lake Shirley Improvement Corp. For data drawdown modification. Wendy, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, before we start, procedural question.
Yep.
I just want to either confirm for the record or not that Jeff Viviano, who fortunately just joined us recently, that his disclosure form has been submitted and been met on and approved by the Board of Selectmen, so he can participate.
That is between Jeff and the State Ethics Commission. I actually had a meeting with Town Council today, and I asked him about that. And he said that that was Jeff's business, and and it's up to Jeff to decide whether or not he has a conflict of interest in the Lake Shirley drawdown.
I've submitted the form. I don't think there is a conflict of interest. So I guess I can leave it open for discussion if anybody wants to discuss it, but I feel I can reasonably vote on this topic.
Mr. Chairman, I would agree, being in a similar circumstance and had to file the paperwork and go in front of the selectmen. I would totally agree with Jeff. You know, you're affecting a wide body of people. There's no direct financial impact.
And
Jeff's
Jack, we're not,
probably a better person to make a decision on.
Jack, we're not going to discuss this anymore.
Okay,
Okay, it's not our decision to make. We're not going to discuss it anymore.
that's fair.
Any other announcements? Wendy,
Hi. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
I can,
Okay, great. Wendy Gendron with Aquatic Restoration
but
Consulting.
please do hold the microphone up to you because when the microphone's farther from your mouth, I can't hear you. So-
Okay. So Wendy Gendron with Aquatic Restoration Consulting, representing Lake Shirley Improvement Corps for the request to extend the drawdown period to December 31st in the order of conditions. And the reason for this extension is not necessarily this year because we're doing fine on the drawdown, but on those odd years where we have a lot of rain, we don't tend to reach the drawdown depth. So it's to give a little bit of room in the schedule to allow for that different climate condition. So that was the request. It was made in September, and I believe we met about it, not last meeting, but the meeting before, and the commission wished to review the information and extend the conversation to tonight. So I'm here representing and answer any questions you have on that.
So what questions do commission members have on this request? Questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Carla,
Yeah, first, having a lot of experience with the drawdown, exactly what Wendy said, that it's it's quite difficult to reach the levels that have a significant impact on the fan wart here. And I sure hope we do this year get at least feet or more. However, I am wondering what their justification is, or what Wendy thinks the justification would be at this early date to extend a date that isn't coming up until December 1st. I would need a pretty good justification to override the DEP guidelines on that. And there's a lot of time between now and then. I believe the lake is at 4 feet already. It depends on what rain we get in November. If we get rain in November, like quite often happens historically, then extending this come our second meeting in November I would certainly 110% support. But if we don't get a lot of rain in November, then at the current rate, we'll be quite deep by the end of November. And the other factor is we don't really know what the temperatures are going to the beginning of December. So without significant justification of why 1 month in advance or a little more than 1 month in advance, we should extend the DEP guideline. I would have a tough time. So I'm hoping, Wendy has some good hard justification why we won't, by December 1st is not going to get the job done.
Sure, I can answer that, Mr. Luck. The request is really to change the order of conditions so that we have flexibility for the 5-year permit in order to do that. We wouldn't necessarily want to extend that period of time to the 31st. It should be an odd change. It should be an odd year. And in fact, we have no problem coming back to the commission on any one given year to notify you that we're looking to take advantage of that extension from the 1st to the 31st, all depending on the weather conditions. But as it is now, if it was to happen without having that written in the order of conditions, we'd have to file an emergency notification and kind of that situation that we were in last year. And there's some debate on whether that emergency notification really applies. As you know, the town of Shirley doesn't believe so. So the easiest thing for us to do is get it written into the order of conditions for both towns and then represent to the commission on a year by year basis if we're seeing that the weather and the climate are not cooperating.
Oh, thank you very much, Wendy. That I now understand, and it's really part of the problem with not. And if I just haven't seen it, I apologize, with not having what you're requesting in writing, because I thought you were requesting that we just extend it for this year. What you're actually here, I now think you're requesting is a change in the order of conditions. And on that point, I don't think it's appropriate. This is the appropriate process for changing such a significant specific condition in the order of condition. I think we need something, it's a little bit more of a hearing level that the public is informed of a hearing and so forth. It's not like a simple, a house is a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, or, there's some minor field change kind of thing. This is an order of conditions that went through, as a process. So without hearing more, and not my final decision, but at the moment, I wouldn't support an order of conditions with this process.
Matt, did we receive anything in writing from Lake Shirley telling him, explaining what they wanted tonight? Please unmute yourself, Matt.
I had received email notifications from Wendy and Joanna outlining what Wendy had just stated.
That they wanted to change the order of conditions?
That is correct. They asked for, they're on this for a field change to the order of conditions. That's why we're here.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? Oh, Jack Rabbit, go ahead.
Sorry about that, Bob. Mr. Chairman, excuse me. Oh, okay, two parts if I could, Wendy and Joanne. Okay, so what you're asking for is a change in the order of conditions, a modification, where in fact you would still continue to come to us every year, and it wasn't an automatic, you could go beyond the 9th. It's just that if there was an opportunity for something that to have to happen. Is that, am I capturing that correctly? Is that what was being requested in right? Is it
Correct.
available to us? Okay.
So at the last meeting, when I was presenting, I called out the actual line item in the order of conditions that we wanted amended, and all it was to change it from December 1st to December 31st in the order of conditions, and then full acknowledgement that if the commission wanted to add, obviously, any language in there that and extending from the 1st to the 31st would require notification and approval as needed on a year-by-year basis. That's fine. But if the condition stays at December 1st, a field change for the town of Shirley, they don't believe that applies. So it's cleaner administratively to have it in the order of conditions to allow the 31st, and then we just ask for permission depending on the weather for justification for that.
Okay. If I could move on to a second similar question, you'll see why I'm asking the second. Right now, I believe, having gone through a whole drawdown experience on our lake, we did an analysis, and I believe that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joanna, in the past you were approved to go down to 9 feet. Is that correct? A 9-foot drawdown?
Yes.
Yeah. And right now, and I was mistaken last week. I thought when I visited the site, I didn't think the drawdown had really started yet, except for maybe a half a foot. And now, from what I understand, it's about 4 feet down. Is that correct? 3.5, 4 feet. And so therefore, if the weather doesn't get really bad, you should be okay to make at least 6 feet, I would think, by if unless all heck breaks loose, to make 6 feet. And the desire to make 9 is something in question. One of the requirements, as you're well aware, is that we first have to acknowledge the laws placed on us by the Wetlands Protection Act, but also by DEP, as well as Fish and Wildlife. Now, Fish and Wildlife has decreed that it's done by December 1st, and we have to create a real good excuse for the reason why we might want to continue and bypass what they've asked us to comply with. Is that correct?
I'll speak to that.
Who are you
So,
asking?
I'm sorry.
yeah, I don't know if you're
Who-
asking me
Joanne,
or
one
the
the
chairman.
Mention of Jack.
Okay, go ahead, Wendy, if you could.
Yeah, so what the GEIR, the General environmental impact report for the state, which serves as the basis for the
Right.
conservation commissions and DEP to regulate drawdowns and other in-lake management techniques, is to consult with the Division of Fish and Wildlife for the drawdown when it's beyond, I can't
December
remember,
1st.
beyond 3 feet. And so we did that as part of this notice of intent. You folks got the
Mhm.
Fish and Wildlife's comment, and we only asked for finishing the drawdown on December 1st in that notice of intent. And the
Wh-
reason why we did that is, we had heard past concerns about the commission not wanting to approve something all the way to the 31st, but then you have an oddball year where you don't necessarily to get that depth. So I understand if the process wants to include the Division of Fish and Wildlife again to see if they have any significant comments on that. That's just like I said, I don't believe that we're going to have this issue this year, but for the record, it's just cleaner to have it in the order of conditions and come back on a ad hoc basis.
So if you could help me, it previously was approved to 9 feet. The last time through with Fish and Wildlife, did they approve 6 or 9?
6.
6. So therefore now they've said, okay, you're at 6 feet. If you go beyond the December the 1st date and we want to go to 9, which I would love to see you go to 9 actually, but
Jack,
okay, excuse me, let me finish my point.
Jack.
Jim. Yeah,
why it's talking about 9? The
Because that
Order
was-
Commission says 6. I don't know why we're talking about anything beyond 6,
because they were previously approved to it.
but they're not approved now.
Right, that's the point.
So let's stop talking about 9.
Okay, Bob, excuse me. Right now, the order is 6 feet. So if we go beyond that, we have to get Fish and Wildlife involved, I believe. And therefore, for us to come back and write in an order of conditions that says you're going to have to come back if you want to go that, we would have to then go to Fish and Wildlife in every one of those.
They're not asking to go beyond 6 feet though, are they?
No.
I don't think they
No.
are. So they're going to stop at 6. But I think, Ken, that if here we are at the end of August and they're down 4 feet, they can certainly get a 6 within a month. And if we approve them going beyond that, we have to go, I believe we have to go back to Fish and Wildlife because they.
No one's talking about going beyond 6. Stop making it up.
If we go beyond December the 1st, I believe we have to go in front of Fish and Wildlife.
That's your
Because that's what they approved.
That's
That
up to the
6 feet.
commission.
That's that in 6 feet. And if we decide to overrule them, we better have a really good reason.
Thank you, Jack. Matthew, when does the order of conditions that Lake Shirley has now expire?
It expires in 2024.
2024. Thank you. And am I right, correct, Matt, that right now their order of conditions says they can draw down to 6 feet?
That is correct. The
That is
initial,
correct.
the initial one was for 4. They then asked for 6. They went back to Fish and Wildlife. Fish and
So if
Wildlife.
I can summarize what I've heard so far, correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy, what you're asking for is the flexibility to take and you're willing to take and ask, put something in there where you would can go beyond December 1st, if you haven't achieved 6 feet by December 1st.
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman,
Carl Luck.
just one other thing that came up, it comes back to me slowly. One other thing that was discussed during the permitting process was instead of having some defined level targets every year, which was the case in prior conditions, that this order of conditions was structured around the strategy that the variability in the drawdown, which is recommended by everyone, all the experts, I haven't heard specifically from Wendy, but every other expert that's heard by the LSIC has agreed, and the GIR agrees that a variability in the drawdown is important, so you don't establish a certain different condition, that's not good either. In order to maintain that variability, though, you want to have conditions every year. So if we set up a process that the expectation is if they haven't achieved 6 feet by December 1st, then we're going to grant extension to the end of the calendar year, then that is really violating the concept of letting the weather create the natural variability in the drawdown. So not that I'm against the concept here of getting authorization to go beyond December 1st if there's justification, but the justification should certainly not be reaching a certain level, because this whole order conditions is structured on a different strategy. And if you change a piece of that, it starts to fall apart.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Ken.
No, I was just going to say that, I think that,
I'm sorry, then I'm going to call on Jeff.
okay, just giving us the flexibility to go, it might be 3 feet that we're trying to get to by December 31st, or it might be 6 feet, depending on how much rain and all of those conditions. So, but to give us that flexibility, to me, I think would be appropriate with some conditioning that they come back for approval.
Thank you, Ken. Jeffrey.
Yeah, my understanding is the order condition states that you'll draw it down between 4 to 6 feet each year. Is that going to change each year?
I'll answer that. First, I'll just start by answering Ken or commenting on Ken. Ken's absolutely right. So it doesn't guarantee that we're getting 6 feet every year. It says that if we don't get 6 feet by the 1st and we're only at 2 feet, or in the case of, gosh, I don't remember, in 2019, we weren't even close to that.
Right.
You still have the ability to get down to maybe 3 feet by December 31st. And then after December 31st, whatever weather happens. And so you have variability created there as well. So there's no guarantee that you'll always be there at 6 feet. And then to Jeff's comment, is the 4 to 6 feet is maybe if the data is showing in the plants that the 6 feet was super successful, that maybe you didn't have to go further down. And again, the intent of the drawdown is to hopefully reduce the reliance on herbicides.
Okay, and another question is, there was a large increase in fan wort this year, and I believe the drawdown it's very good at kind of neutralizing that fan wort and reseeding this spring once the water does come back up. So I think it is very important this year to maintain that 6 foot level, get it exposed and get it frosted up. If we do have a significant amount of rain, which, who knows if we will or not, I think to change a date to keep the drawdown continuing or to maintain 6 feet after the 1st, I think everybody is in agreement that can be done and it should be done. I think at this point, we just need to put it in the hands of the DEP and Fish and Wildlife and see what they say. So, at this point, and, other years we may not be at this kind of drawdown. So I think the only thing that would really restrict us to go to the 31st would be if there's ice to form on the edges, which would be more of a safety issue. So I think in my recollection, I think that was kind of the reason it was kind of set as December 1st. So I think that's one thing that we really should keep an eye on this year and in future years if we do approve this, which I think we should. So that's just my comment.
Jeff. Who is RB Moto Z4?
That's me, Bob.
Who is that?
Richard Birch.
Oh, Richard Birch. What do you know? Superman. He's here in spite.
Oh, yeah. Painkillers are a wonderful thing. Wendy, have you been to Shirley for the extension yet?
We asked to get on their agenda, yes, but we have not heard.
Okay, because I believe the last couple of years we've had the weather issue, and Lunenburg has allowed the drawdown to continue past December 1st, correct?
Correct.
It's been Shirley that's been your impediment in drawing down past December 1st?
Correct, because they didn't believe that that was a field change that the commission could, they wanted a full-on change in the order of conditions, so it's just cleaner to have that administrative change in both towns at this point, and hopefully
Okay.
we have that through the 5-year permit.
Well, I mean, irregardless of Shirley, when we did it, we thought it was justified to just have something in writing and extended it to December 31st. So Lunenburg's never stopped you as long as we felt the need to continue the drawdown through December 31st. And of course, the last 2 years, you know, with all of the rain, we had almost no drawdown when we hit December 1st. So I think
Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Jack Rabbit.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, just a question for Rich. I believe that the Fish and Wildlife did give us the waiver to go to the end of the year.
I don't believe, go Richard Birch.
Did they, Rich?
I don't think we went to Fish and Wildlife.
there we go, unmuted. Now DEP 2 years ago got involved and allowed them to go to December 31st, and then they shut it off. In further discussions with DEP, they said it's really the local commission that makes a decision to go past the deadline of December 1st that is set in the GEIR. So at this point, I mean, I would be in favor of amending a condition that December 31st is the cutoff. They can request on an annual basis as needed for an extension up until December 31st, if existing conditions require it. I'm not sure that I would feel comfortable giving a blanket relief from the GEIR deadline of December 1st in perpetuity. I think that should remain with the commission on an annual basis. And
I believe
thinking
that's
about
what
it,
they're
if we
asking
wanted
for.
to go forward. I'm sorry, Bob?
I believe that's what they're asking for. They're perfectly willing to come back every year and ask.
Yep. And I would be in favor of such a request, and in thinking about it, and it's not something that we could do this evening, we could always make it an agent's determination. If we set up criteria of rainfall, current depth, historic depths reached, because if they've met 6 feet in 2 prior years, there's no reason that they have to get to 6 feet again. And as Carl said, there's supposed to be a built-in variability in the drawdown in the target depth. So the weather would be some of that factor in the variability of the drawdown depth. But I would be in favor of, at least this evening, doing an extension request annually.
Richard, are there any other comments from commissioners?
I just, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to, I'm not sure I understood completely or followed completely Rich's suggestion. I certainly heard, and I think we all agree, and as you said, we've done every year, we've given an extension for a given year based on the conditions, and I'm sure that would happen going forward. But Richard, are you saying that you would agree with tonight modifying the order of conditions to that effect? Or are you saying, I'm not quite sure what you're saying, that we would, I think everybody also agrees, and Wendy, correct me if I'm wrong, that this would be a year by year, that December 1st would still be the official date, but that you would have the ability to come back and, the end of November, we have a second meeting in November meeting, you'd come back with a request for an extension based on, justification, and that we would have the ability to do that. We have the ability to do that already. So, Richard, could you clarify what your suggestion was?
I would be in favor of a request to extend with permissions from December 1st to December 31st. Other thing that I did agree with you, Carl, is I don't know if a field change is the appropriate method of amending order of conditions. And I think I had brought that up at the last meeting as well.
I'd like to hear from Matt about amending.
So I'm in favor of the request. I don't think a field change is the correct way to do it.
Matthew?
Yes, Bob, what was the question?
Rich is saying that he doesn't think a field change is the correct way to do this. What's your take on that?
Well, the proper way to go is what you're doing right now. It was presented as a field change, and the commission needs to decide whether or not the field change is an appropriate venue to make this change in the order, or whether it would require an amendment. The way I have always viewed the DEP policy and the way we've implemented the policy is that when we get a request for field change, the commission makes a decision as to whether or not the resulting change would require a revision of the boilerplate that was previously issued. If so, then it required an amendment. If not, then it didn't. So what you need to decide is if this request requires the actual boilerplate that we issued to the Lake Shirley Improvement Corporation to be rewritten. If that's the case, then you may wish to consider an amendment.
And if it's an amendment,
I simply put in the advertisement that I actually have one written just in case this issue did come up, because the legal ads are actually going out for the November 18th meeting tomorrow, and it would be put on the November 18th agenda. It would be subject to a public hearing, legal ad, a butter notification. That's what an amendment is. It's a reopening of the hearing, but only for that portion of the request. In other words, if you guys do it as an amendment, you can only consider that part of the amendment in relation to the order. You cannot go back and revisit the entire order. That entire order is still final. You can only revisit that portion of the request and how it would impact the order and its revision.
so Matthew, if it was done as an amendment, they would have to take and send out a butter notices to everybody who lives on Lake Shirley
And do a legal advertisement, that is
and
correct.
do a legal advertisement.
That is correct.
All right, I'm gonna poll the membership about how, if they are comfortable doing it tonight as a field change or whether they want to do it as an amendment. Katie Childs. You have to unmute yourself, Katie.
I'd be comfortable doing it tonight as a field change, but it's a really tired one.
Thank you. Carl Luck.
I think this is very important. I fully support the concept. And I think that it needs to be better documented than a field change. So I think it is so important that it's worth doing an amendment.
Thank you. Jack Rabbit.
Yeah, I think with regard to the contract that we have with Lake Shirley, I believe we're saying that it's separable. Each element is separable. And if we take that one element by itself, we can address that without having to drag everybody in. Would that be correct? Or do we need to notify all the abutters? And if we do, that's going to take some time.
Jack, the question I asked you is, are you in favor of doing it as a field change tonight
Yeah,
or as a full-fledged amendment to the order of conditions, which would require a legal ad and a notification of abutters?
right. So I think going the amendment route is not a good answer in terms of the timing that we have. So therefore, I would support making if a field change is acceptable, yes. But I don't understand why we can't still consider an emergency order, only because Lake Shirley doesn't want it, or that are we getting pushed into something that we don't need to be getting pushed into?
Excuse me, Jack. If you guys approve it as a field change, the emergency order becomes moot.
Right.
Thank you, Jack. Ken.
I would be in favor of doing it tonight as a field change. I think that, it still gives us the protection that they're going to have to come back every year. And I think that that would be appropriate to do tonight.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think a field change tonight is appropriate. And I think with Shirley and how they want it done, I think it would be better for all. So, yep.
Richard Birch.
So I guess I'm a little
Richard Birch.
confused. Yeah, can you hear me, Bob?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, so I'm a little confused. The order of conditions states that the drawdown ends December 1st. You can't do a field change without amending the order of conditions. I mean, it may be semantics, but if you want to amend the order of conditions to state that they can draw down to December 31st with annual permission if needed, you have to change the order of conditions. So I'm not sure how a field change is going to be legal and appropriate to change an order of conditions. I mean, I certainly, and proposed it last year, an emergency order for the annual if they needed it, and certainly go that route. I myself, and I don't know if Matt ever heard back from DEP telling us that we couldn't issue the emergency order and extend it to December 31st. The only thing I heard from was the Shirley Concom that said they didn't feel that that was appropriate and they wouldn't extend it that way. So
My recollection
I don't
on the
think,
discussion we
again,
had with
as I said
DEP,
last meeting, a field change is correct in trying to change a specific line item in an order of condition. I don't think you can do that through a field change.
Thank you, Richard. Matthew?
yeah, my recollection of our conversation with DEP last year was that we told them the rationale behind us issuing the emergency order. They said they weren't sure that that was actually the appropriate way to do it, but they weren't going to fight the order and they would go back and talk about it. And we never heard back from them on that after that.
Are there any comments or questions from members of the public?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Joy Durner.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
I used to be one of you.
No.
I think some of you may have gotten my letter that Jeff and I think some of you, Jeff lives on the lake. I do have some concerns. I understand about drawing down the lake for weed control. Totally get that. However, this year with the drought, I am very concerned. It's gone down very fast. The lake was already a couple feet down. I've been kayaking around the lake as long as I could. Now I really can't. It's too shallow. We have an archipelago of ugliness out in our cove that we've never seen before. And I know probably Jeff has seen that. And from what I could tell, and another gentleman I was speaking to down by the dam over a week ago, and the lake went down so fast. As I said, it was opened October 15th. It was at least 4 feet then. And it looks to me, because the lake is totally drained out of the swamp, that it's got to be at least 6 feet now. Has anybody actually checked the dam to see where we're at? What the number, how far down it is? To me, it looks like 6 feet. And you're talking about a maximum of 6 feet. So if you keep letting it go down through December 1st and past that, we're going to be way past December 6 feet. And I'm worried about the wildlife in the lake.
According to the data that we received from Lake Shirley on October 27th, it was down 45 inches.
So, you're comfortable being in a drought, that especially if you extend it past December 1st, that we're not going to kill the wildlife in the lake?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I don't think they're asking for the approval this year to go to December 31st, are they?
Yes.
I don't think they are.
No, they're not.
No, they're asking for the ability to do that in the order of conditions, and they haven't asked for that emergency order to go to December 31st for this year.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Yeah, this is Wendy. So Yes, we're asking for the 5-year length of the permit to have that flexibility. Once we reach 6 feet, that's it. We do not go any further. The lake is maintained at that 6-foot level by controlling the outlet. And if you could see on what Matt just pulled up, that's the actual data. And you're absolutely right. We are all in a drought condition, and the lake at the start of the drawdown was 8 inches below I guess the normal level. And on that data sheet, it actually compares a couple of different years. If you looked at last year was a very wet year, and you'll see that we didn't even hardly reach any depth by this time last year.
Right.
So you can
And I
see,
think, correct me if I'm wrong, Joanna, if you ever got to below 6 feet, you were starting to get requests for from people with wells having issues.
That's correct, Mr. Bursch.
I'm surprised we're not there now because the lake seems to be the lowest I can remember it being in a long, long time.
Thank you, Joy. Are there any other comments or questions from the members of the public?
I do have a comment.
Go ahead.
I just, for myself, I didn't know that we had the readings from the dam, but I actually used a laser level this morning, and it, in my estimation, it was down 48 inches, and I put the laser level right where the water normally is, and I measured where the water was, and it was at 48 inches exactly today. So if that, and
So
it seems like it is lower, but it really isn't. So.
all right, do I have a motion?
Isn't it right to repair? No, we already have right to repair. Question 1 is about getting your data. So
Anyone care to make a motion?
control our data.
Chairman?
Right?
Yeah.
Before we close this out, if we're at 48 now, we've only really got 2 feet left, 24, you can pull 3 inches a day. Are we jumping the gun? Can we do this at some other time? Does it have to be? Does it require?
Jack, have you not been listening? It's not about this year.
Oh, I do understand that. So why is Lake Shirley creating a problem in terms of, not allowing their participation in this change of order? Where's the problem?
It's not that they're creating a problem. We just want to put the administrative record to be clean.
Right. So there really is right now, there's no overwhelming sense of urgency. And if we wanted to, we always have the option of coming in with an emergency order. Right?
We do. In Lunenburg, yes, you've been willing to do that.
So why wouldn't we go back?
Jack,
Are you cutting me off, Mr. Chairman?
It's my understanding
Yes.
that the reason they're asking for this is because they need it for the Shirley Conservation Commission to get flexibility out of Shirley.
And I'm trying to understand why Shirley needs something if they're approved for 6 feet as well.
Brian Mitchell, James Mitchell, correct. They're sure too. Many think Francis Hodgson Burnett.
Lake Shirley, in the past, when we've encountered a problem with it, we couldn't achieve the drawdown depth. Lake Shirley was unwilling to issue an emergency order and allow the drawdown to continue.
Didn't we do it last year?
No, you did in Lunenburg, but the town of Shirley did not.
Oh, okay.
And so if we have both order of conditions clean, that in both towns that says December 31st, it would just make everything consistent.
Right. So the fear is Lake Shirley wouldn't participate. Okay.
No, the Shirley Conservation Commission.
I mean, Lake Shirley, excuse me. Yes. Their side of Lake Shirley.
Mr. Chairman?
Carlock.
So it sounds like we're being asked to change our order of conditions. We're working very well with the LSIC and giving approvals where necessary. And we're solely being asked to change our order of conditions because of something that's going on Shirley's side. So isn't it Shirley that needs to change their order of conditions? Well, I don't understand why we're being asked to do something that is questionable, whether we can do this technically correct, change our order of conditions by it. Right? So we're being asked to be questionable that really has no real impact. It's the Shirley order of conditions that's the problem. So I just don't understand this.
May I answer?
Yeah.
So
Please.
the reason is, again, to have the administrative record the same in both towns. And the commission may not be the same 3 years from now and may not be willing to issue an emergency order, so that we always have that flexibility written in the record for that flexibility. So that's number one. And again, it's just, it actually is less paperwork on your end because you don't have to issue an emergency order.
So, but so I understand, and that's why I strongly advocate for an amendment. So it really is clear and clean, and we really change the order of conditions, not have some side agreement of a field change. And I agree with Richard that to literally change the order of conditions language, we should go through the proper process and do it through an amendment. And I would 100% support that. The right language, of course, but I would 100% support that. But I think it's more immortalized, to your point, and it's more formalized and cleaner if the order of conditions is actually amended, which is, I thought, really what you were looking for, is really change the language in the order of condition. Is that not the case?
Yes. And it's generally your decision as the Conservation Commission, whether you require a full-on amendment with public notice, a butter notice, I should say, in that process.
But your goal and mine, quite frankly, is to change the language in the order condition on that specific issue.
Well, certainly if the commission was willing to do it as a field change, there would be a record of that, so it wouldn't make that much of a difference.
All right, I want to clarify where I stand on this. So far, I've heard Jack say earlier, I don't know if he still feels that way, that he'd be willing to do a field change. Ken said he'd be willing to do a field change. Jeff said he'd be willing to do a field change, and Katie said he'd be willing to do a field change. I would also be willing to do a field change tonight. I understand Rich thinks it's not the right way to go, but what I heard Matt say was that it was up to the commission whether it could be done as a field change. And so that's where I'm at right now. But we can't do anything unless someone makes a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'm prepared to make a motion, but I want to hear from Matt one more time what his thought is on this, whether it is actually a kosher way to do this.
You are following the procedure as outlined under DEP policy. DEP policy would require that if the applicant is looking to have some type of a change in the order of conditions, they can first elect to submit it as a field change. Commission decides the field change is appropriate, they can approve it as a field change. If not, they can require the amendment. Some of our applicants in the past have bypassed the field change because they wanted a direct change to the boilerplate. So the question is, do you feel that doing it as a field change would be sufficient and not require a change to the boilerplate? If you feel it requires a change to the boilerplate, then you should go the amendment route.
So let's take it one step further. If we do it as a field change, there's like an addendum to the order of conditions?
No, what would happen is a letter would be generated to the applicant, and it would be noted to the file that at a certain date, a field change was approved, and this is what the condition of the field change was.
So essentially it has the same, it does the same thing. It's just, it doesn't change the boilerplate of the order of conditions.
Yeah, well, yeah, that seems to be what's being submitted by the applicant, that this accomplishes the same thing.
Mr. Chair.
Ken, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. I'm thinking.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Jack Rabbit raised his hand.
And I'll defer to Mr. Birch because I don't think he can raise.
Okay, Mr. Birch.
I would make a motion that we issue a letter to the Shirley Concom pending a positive vote that we will amend our order of conditions to state that the drawdown will end December 1st. And we are open to an annual review if the drawdown depth has not been met by December 1st, to extend it up until 6 feet of depth or December 31st. And I would also do that pending a proper notification and amendment to the order of conditions.
Second that.
That way there, it will cover, like, it'll cover Shirley's, or will cover LSIC's request that we extend it and add it to our order of conditions, but it is added to the order of conditions. You can't do a field change to supersede a line in an order of conditions. With all due respect to Matt, I don't believe that that is the way you're supposed to do it.
We have a second.
Second.
Further discussion?
I think, talking back and forth about this, I think that the cleaner way to do it is to have an amendment in the order of conditions. I think that having this kind of side letter is going to open us up for some potential problems. So I would agree with Rich's motion.
So, so the implications of your motion, Richard, would that be that Shirley would have to then take and notify abutters, and we'd have to advertise a public hearing?
Correct. Correct. It would have to be a hearing because we're issuing a waiver to a regulation. A field change is moving a driveway 3 feet, taking down a tree, something that has no material effect on the project. Superseding the GEIR by 30 days is a material change in this overall application. And it is an authority that we should be doing on a case-by-case basis only, and not as a blanket authorization.
Thank you, Richard, but I'll call on Jack Rabbit before I say anything about that. Go ahead, Jack.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm in agreement with Rich with regard to we would have to notify the abutters. This is a significant amendment change, and it's not just a small addendum. And I'm agreeing with Ken completely. Let's not get in trouble. Let's do it the right way, and we can actually execute it in the time that we've got.
Matt Morrow.
Okay, just to clarify on Rich's comment, Rich, while I appreciate the sentiment, I was not advocating a position one way or the other. I was merely stating what the procedure and policy is. What I said was, if the commission felt that this particular move required a written change to the order of conditions, it should require an amendment. What I did not say was, go ahead and pass field change.
Oh, I understand that, Matt. If you took it that way, I do apologize.
No, not a problem. I just wanted to clarify. That's all. I just wanted to make sure it was clear.
Yeah, but what we're looking to do is change a written order of condition, which you can't change the written order of conditions in a field change. And I think people seem to be back and forth on that.
Yeah, you're correct.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote. Ken Jones.
Aye.
Rich Birch.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
Carl Luck.
Aye.
Jeff Viviano.
You're in second place.
Jeff Viviano, I'm sorry. Jeff, you're muted.
No, I said no. I think it should be a field change.
And I also think it should be a field change. But I'll still vote aye. So any questions, Joanna or Wendy?
No, I think we will probably still pursue that with the town of Shirley because the abutter request is only 22 residents. However, to notify all the residents and go through that process is quite expensive for the town of Lunenburg. So maybe we'll just be back for an emergency order as needed for the town of Shirley. But thank you for your time, Commission. Appreciate it.
And I'm so sorry that we didn't put this on the agenda at the last meeting. That was an oversight on our part, so.
No worries.
Hey, before we adjourn this, with respect to the abutter notification, the formal abutter notification, does the commission want the entire lake notified by the actual formal abutter notification? Or do they want the same amount of residents in that area notified that Shirley Concom is requiring? And then the Lake Shirley Improvement Corp can do a general notification on its website.
I would be fine with that. And a notice in the newspaper.
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're doing an amendment, a legal notice in the paper is mandatory.
I'm good with that. If
I'm
Rich
sorry.
is good with that.
Did Matt say that again? I just didn't quite follow.
In other words, there's a certain list of abutters around the dam where all of this work would affect them directly because of the drawdown. And there's a list that Shirley Concom has generated that I could work with Wendy on to ensure that all of the immediate residents around the Robs Hill area are notified, at least in the vicinity of the dam, and that a general notification be sent to the residents by one newspaper and by two, the usual advertising channels that Joanna would use on the Lake Shirley Improvement Corp's website. Their methods of notification on the website seem to be very effective. So you would still have the abutter notification to allow it to go through without necessarily generating the huge expense that Wendy was just referring to. If you're going to do this, you're not going to approve it as a field change. And again, I said this commission decision, the cleanest way to do it is an amendment. So rather than having to continue to come back for emergency orders, you'd rather change that boilerplate, and you'd rather come back like Wendy, what you were proposing, every year to the commission if there is a problem due to weather constraints or other types of variabilities. I believe Jeff noted that sometimes ice can be an issue. And I believe for us that actually happened one year. We had an ice dam at the dam that, slowed the process down. So that's what I'm saying here.
I mean, from my point of view, as long as it's
as long-
a legal notification, then it's whatever we have to do is fine.
One of the things I would note that in large projects that involve large areas, like we have the entirety of Lake Shirley, like for example, when you have certain local road projects, instead of going to each property and notifying each abutter on each property that say a water main is being replaced within 100 feet, the commission is allowed to regulate a certain distance for a certain portion of the project. For example, when we had a project where we had the water district doing large sections of main along Lancaster Ave, I think it was about 10 years ago, we looked at the areas that were directly impacted, meaning the wetlands, and people that had frontage on those mains were the only ones that were notified of the hearing because they were the only ones that were directly impacted. The regulations, do allow you some flexibility when it comes to large projects. Large, meaning
So, Mr.
large
Chairman,
area projects.
I'm sorry. My sentiment's the same as Ken. As long as we make sure this is done legally and compliant with our regulations, I just don't see every abutter to this lake has the same effect of the drawdown. It's not just people near the dam. It's drawn down everywhere. So I don't know how you pick and choose. I do know that our regulations allow hand delivery of notifications, and the LSIC has a pretty good network of directors and people, so they could certainly reduce their costs that way and to extreme. But we have to comply. I don't think we can. I don't see obviously a way to limit which sections of the lake are affected more or less than any other sections. And I think it's dangerous ground to try to go down that path and maybe set a dangerous precedent going forward for future notice of intent around the Lake Shirley or Hickory Hills or for that matter. So I'm a little bit nervous about that, but I guess that's all up to, to the LSIC to make sure that they comply with all of the laws and regulations of notification regarding that.
Matt, are you done with your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, then I'm looking for any other questions from Wendy or Joanna? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. That was the only item on tonight's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, if there's a go around for the members, a quick discussion with regard to the upcoming agenda. If we could.
The upcoming agenda?
Yeah, the upcoming agenda that's going to be released tomorrow.
Got it, Jack.
I would like to see us add a small work session as a result of what we've just learned with regard to some recent decisions we're making, and that we look at the law and look at how if we turn someone down, clearly we have to create a listing for why we did this. If we decide to actually violate our own bylaws or state laws, violating meaning ignoring them a little bit, we should also be providing an explanation as to why we did that. We do get quite a bit of feedback sometimes and we're not consistent, but if we make a decision that says we're going to waiver that particular piece, we're not asking right now to get a full listing of all the waivers. And for that matter, we're not looking at the cumulative effect. And I think that needs to be part of that overall discussion. And we need to have some sort of a dissension paper or some sort of a paper that says this is the reasons why we did it. And I think that'll help us a lot in the future. It'll also perhaps cause us to start thinking a little bit differently about what our presidents have been in the past, as well as how to begin a discussion. And the discussion needs to start with a recognition of each one of the laws that affect that particular decision. So if we could have a small workshop and that agenda isn't too big, I would ask that we have that particular time.
Thank you, Jack. Any other? I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Carl Luck.
Aye.
Jack Rabbit.
Aye.
Ken.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Katie Childs.
Hi.
Rich Birch.
Aye.
And I for myself. Good night, all.
Night. Thank you.
Good night.
Rich, rest up.
Oh, yeah.